everybody, and welcome to the LeanTossup College Football Podcast. This is, it doesn't really have a name. We're going to call it Week 14 or Conference Championship Week, but I guess technically it is Week 14 because there's a random Buffalo versus Akron game this week. Last week, and we're definitely going to hang a banner about this. We're going to hang a banner, but we deserve to hang a banner a lot more than Ohio State does about what happened in the big game. So we'll talk about. I'm sure we'll be talking about that a little bit. But before we do, I'm gonna, of course, welcome my co-host at BuckMetrics. How are you doing on this Tuesday night?
I am as good as you sound compared to last week. I thought you were going to fall asleep a couple times last week, but you made it through.
Yeah, it was. It was. Again, I had just returned from travel, so obviously I was still a little bit tired. I think I literally just got back to North America. I think like 24 hours before we were recording, like 24 hours or so before recording. It's a bit jet lag, but I'm definitely feeling a lot better now. Another whole week, and I feel a lot more rested. So, but I still can't fix my sleep is still a bit messed up, but like it's actually better now. Like it's weird. Before I could like never wake up early, but now I can only wake up early. So it's weird, but it's better. So
We're glad
that's
to have all of you back now this
yes.
week.
Happy to be back. So let's talk about this week and what it was. So obviously we had some amazing results, some crazy games, some great stuff happened, but also some weird stuff happened. So what was the week that was?
Okay, cleaning up a couple things that I commented upon last week and seeing how they played out on Saturday. Um, I had mentioned very insightfully that Iowa State had a sneaky good defense, and they were really sneaky this time, but not that good. They gave up 62 points to a pretty dynamic TCU team. TCU is good. 62 points to them is not good. I think they might have just hit the wall. Young defense, long season, no bowl in sight, and they might have just kind of just called it, packed it up a little bit week earlier than most other teams. The other thing that I had mentioned last week, and we've been saying this for a while, was after UCF lost to Navy, 17-14. We said good luck figuring out this UCF team, and another roller coaster ride for them. They actually were leading USF 31-7, and then they went from that to trailing 39-38 in just 17 minutes of game time. So, little preview to come from them. They're playing again this week, but man, what a psychotic team UCF is.
Yeah,
Um,
that was. I remember seeing that score at the time, and I was sitting there being like, that's a really big blowout. I don't think UCF is like that good. And sure enough, I was like, and then I kept watching. I was like, that's getting closer. It's getting closer. I'm like, oh my god, are they gonna blow this? And they pulled it out, but um, it was pretty crazy. Again, this UCF team has been so weird this season because we look at it and we're like, oh, like sorry, USF. This USF team because there's been so many like they almost took down Florida. They've almost taken down UCF. There's
yeah,
been a couple of games like they've actually been pretty good at covering random spreads, but like they have like what 2 wins? I think win or 2 wins. Like it's been an absolutely brutal year on the scoreboard, but like this team is fundamentally like okay, like I mean okay, as they're like as good as a 1 win team can be, but like that's still like they're not bad, and it's really hard to reconcile their like relatively decent metrics with like this horrible like result in the season. So we'll have to see how that translates to next year. That's a team to look out for next year potentially.
yeah. Their only win was over Howard. Um,
Powerhouse Howard.
Presumably, yeah, not presumably not Stern. But yeah, here's one of those that you just think, what on earth is going on here? They lost to Temple 54-28. Um, eh, yeah, I who knows what's left there and who they're going to hire. That's going to be interesting. I've actually heard that Deion Sanders might be in play for that job, which
Hmm.
might be a good fit. We'll see.
That could work. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. On to the big game. First of all, Michigan beats Ohio State 45-23. Um, my takeaways from this is I'd seen Ohio State, but I just kind of seen them at their very best. I mean, CJ Stroud, when he's pressured, he pretty much sucks. And this might be a matter of I've got a very skewed perception because the team I watch the most has basically the David Copperfield of quarterbacks, Caleb Williams, that just is very rarely tackled and can escape almost any pass rush seemingly. So and throws very well on the run. And CJ Stroud is just not any of that. The other thing, JJ McCarthy, nice game. I'm still not sold. Um, I didn't really see. Now he had some nice runs, but I didn't see anything that made me think, man, thank God JJ McCarthy is there, or else they wouldn't have made that. He made nice Power Five quarterback plays, but I don't think that they were anything special that a quarterback of a top 30 team wouldn't also be able to do. And a lot of that stuff was he had guys wide open on one of their long touchdowns. He actually floated the ball up and really underthrew his guy. It was just a bad pass, it looked to me. I don't know if he's just trying to get air under the ball. They had a short one that was broken. That was all the receiver, broke a tackle. Crazy defense by Ohio State that just left the corner really on an island, and that turned into a long touchdown too. So um, I'm very impressed with Michigan. I've just left this game really unimpressed with both quarterbacks.
Yeah, that's kind of my take. We're gonna talk about CJ Stroud in a second, but I want to echo the same things about JJ McCarthy. Um, again, he was just a decent quarterback, right? And this was something we said. Well, I think I said it, but you also echoed it too. Remember when Ohio State played Iowa, and when they played Penn State, it's like, hey, if you couple a good defense with a decent quarterback and a good offense, Ohio State is in trouble. And sure enough, that's literally exactly what happened, right? Like
Yeah.
we said with the when I said with Iowa, if they could go down and score 2 touchdowns, they lose that game by 10. And like this is the thing, same thing with Penn State. Penn State did actually cover the spread, albeit a back door. But this is the thing, right? Is McCarthy better than Sean Clifford? Maybe, I don't know. But the thing is, they're and they mentioned it in the broadcast too. It seems like Ohio State was like, okay, well, we're really worried about the run, so we're just say JJ McCarthy beat us in the air, and he's like, okay, let's just do
Okay.
that.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it's like if you have a really good passing defense, if you've got like amazing shutdown corners, like if you're like the LA Rams, sure, okay, but you're not the LA Rams. You have a pretty horrible defense. Your entire game plan revolves around just scoring a ton of points and then beating teams that way. Like you're not you don't have NFL shutdown corners. You have really good offensive players. So like I don't understand where this like why they're like like that's fine, just let him pass on it. And he's like okay, and like their cornerbacks are bad enough that he was able to do that. I think they were really worried about Blake Corum, and Blake Corum didn't even play. I don't think he was. I think he was injured. He was game time or maybe played a couple snaps. I don't remember, but
Yeah.
like you have to adjust your game plan. If the thing you're most worried about doesn't play, then drop 8 guys, do too high. Like I don't understand how you just let this guy like this relatively pedestrian quarterback just pass all over you. And on the flip side for CJ Stroud, again, he struggled against really good defense. He struggled against Iowa to some extent, struggled against Penn State. And this is the thing. Right now, CJ Stroud is still the favorite to be first overall draft pick. Right now, the Texans are, I'd say, openly tanking. They had a quarterback who they had basically they had oh my god, what's his name? Davis Mills, who was the court. They drafted him last year or 2 years ago in the third round. He was their quarterback for basically the last year and a half. And this week they're just like, no, we're going to bench him in favor of some other guy, like the third string backup. And then that guy was horrible. So I think they're pretty much openly tanking at this point, and they only have one win. So at this point, they're if assuming they continue openly tanking, they're going to be picking overall. The Houston Texans have actually drafted. They had one of Alabama's receivers from last year. They drafted John Menchie, who basically didn't play this year because he had leukemia. He'll be back next year. But like, if you're an NFL team and you're looking at this and you need a quarterback, which the team drafting first overall will very likely need, I don't understand why you would pick Stroud over Bryce Young at this point, right? If you keep seeing if the only good defenses
Yeah.
he's played he's struggled against, like the NFL is where you have good defenses. That's the entire purpose of the NFL. You're able to take the best defensive players from college and funnel them into the NFL. If like I mean offenses in the NFL are good as well, but like it's a lot easier to concentrate better defensive players on a defense in the NFL than it is in college. if the only two good defenses he's played against, he's like really struggled against, then how do you feel safe as an organization drafting him?
I agree. Weird about Bryce Young. Weird to say this about anybody at Alabama today, but you keep on hearing about, well, who does he have around him? And maybe that's a narrative that can actually work. It's like, yeah, put better people around him. Better than Alabama, okay, but better than basically what the product is on the field, and you know he'll do fine. He had a pretty good season. He basically, opposite of Stroud. Stroud just seemed like Ohio State just pulled out explosive plays at time to time after screwing around. And Young doesn't have those explosive weapons around him, but he basically has not been the losses have almost been despite him, not because of him. I'd say that way.
Yeah, and this is also another the whole not having anybody around him is actually an inverse knock against Stroud. Say he gets drafted by the Panthers, or well, probably not the Lions, but say he gets drafted by the Panthers.
Mm-hmm.
He right now he has what, four or maybe five NFL wide receivers around him right now.
Mm-hmm.
If he is struggling to throw under pressure to them, the guys who are able to get the most open,
Yeah.
what's he going to be like when he maybe has only one or two? And also
Yeah.
against even better defenses. So that is really concerning. Now, there's also things about Ohio State. I actually kind of think Ohio State might make the college football playoff if one of USC or TCU loses. But like in terms of NFL betting, and again, you can get Bryce Young first overall at plus 250, 260 right now, depending on the book. I'm gonna be reinvesting in that. I think that's a steal at this point. I think that's a really good investment.
Yeah. Can't disagree with you too much on that. Um, all right, other Big Ten games. I'm gonna pair a couple of these here. Purdue beats Indiana. Nebraska beats Iowa 24-17. Um, Kind of weird that Nebraska eliminates Iowa from the Big Ten West title. That just kind of encapsulates what a weird division this was, especially this year. Handed it to Purdue, who took a super circuitous route to the title. I didn't think it was possible 3 weeks ago. I didn't know. It kind of seemed like, okay, if weird things happen, that they could win, and we wound up being right. I'll get into them a little more deeper in part two, but um, just a, I mean, even by Big Ten West standards, a really, really weird season.
I will say that because Nebraska over Iowa was a pick of mine, and
Yeah, it was.
I had Nebraska plus 10.5. I did actually play money line on like a on a. I fully expected the money line to lose in like a horrible gut wrenching fashion, but that didn't happen. And the thing was, it was even better because literally, I bet it on the book, which has automatic when you get up 17 points, it automatically cashes the money line. So and Nebraska scored like the first 17 points. So I was like, oh okay. Because I remember looking at the score and it was like 24-0, and I'm like, oh no, they're gonna screw this up. They're gonna screw it up. I'm like, I'm gonna lose the plus 10.5 of the money line. I'm like, oh wait a minute, the money line's cash out. I'm good now. I've already won money on this game. So, but no, like this is like full circle now to last year when Nebraska had like an insane lead against Iowa and Iowa
Yeah.
upset them to win the Big Ten West somehow. It's full circle, and it, that game is this Nebraska Iowa game, man. Every year, it's something crazy happens, and like I still don't even understand how like Spencer Petras got injured in like
Yeah.
like he went, I think, what, 1 for 6 and got, well, he was either injured or benched or both, maybe a
He was injured.
combination.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like I think if you go 1 for 6, I think it's a combination injured slash benching. But and then Alex Padilla came in and scored 17 points, and they gave it a game. But man, like just this like, and then we're gonna have to see this Iowa team again, as I saw online, potentially the experts on ESPN, and again I say experts because they've just looked at the sheet of which seed plays in which bowl, but they're forecasting Pittsburgh versus Iowa in the Pinstripe Bowl, which that would be amazing. That would be an amazing game. I hope we see that. But again, Iowa will be playing in a bowl game somehow. They are allowed in a bowl, so they will be playing in a bowl game. So we will in the future have a bowl podcast, of course. But man, we only have one more potential game of Spencer Petras on this Iowa team, so we gotta make that count.
Do you think that there's like one singular fan in like Waterloo, Iowa, who's actually thinking, man, if Spencer Petras didn't get hurt, we actually had a chance to win this game?
Like maybe like
Not beside his family,
yeah, I
okay?
was about to say that. Maybe like a family member. So no, I'd say no. Maybe like a childhood friend. I don't know.
Nah,
Uh,
not if the childhood friend like ever threw a ball with him.
it's like
Maybe
nah,
somebody from, like his art class.
this isn't your year, man. This isn't your year.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, we'll have to see. But man, this I've actually seen some Cade McNamara or Cade, the quarterback from Michigan last year. He's entered the transfer portal. I saw a couple people post maybe Iowa. That would be hilarious. Iowa
Nah.
could potentially get a quarterback upgrade through the transfer portal, so that could be kind of interesting to see. Let's just see
Yep.
if it's just Spencer Petras being horrible or if it's the offense being horrible. I kind of think it's the offensive scheme, but we'll see.
Yeah, I think they have to maybe take somebody from overseas who's not really familiar with the rules and just how bad Iowa is.
Yeah,
I'll believe when I see it in terms of a a good quarterback. Um, a result that was more surprising, even though the point spread was considerably less. Texas A&M beats LSU 38-23. Um, I I don't really have anything against Texas A&M, and this was Jimbo's "I told you so" moment. If you saw his remarks after the game, and I think this is probably the best possible outcome for next season in terms of just way to start the season off with just entertainment you're going to have right out the gate. It's going to be just more of the same drama, agony, horrible offense. Oh my gosh, what do we do in College Station next year? I think if they had another clunker, it would be okay. Things are going to change. He already got rid of his OC, but he's going to bring in somebody else to do the same stupid stuff that they're doing now. It's basically the Mario of the Central Time Zone.
yeah, it's gonna be interesting. And again, I hope we get to see the same kind of thing as last year because I hope we get to see them play Appalachian State or something, and then we get like a plus 17 and a half
Mm-hmm.
spread in like week 2 or something. And this is the thing, right? On one hand, should this Texas A&M team have made a bowl? Maybe. But like they didn't. I mean, they were maybe better, but like again, it's so crazy that this team barely beats UMass, and then the next week beats LSU, a team heading to the SEC championship game, a team that beat Alabama.
Yeah.
But it's so weird because last year in this game, I had Texas A&M over LSU. I think I had minus 6.5 or something against LSU in the last week of the season, and LSU won that game. And now we've it's some of these rivalry games are so weird. It's just like it's completely unpredictable, and you wonder if LSU because who did LSU play last week? Didn't they play? Um, well, they beat UAB. I was about to say it's a letdown game, but that's not really that much of a letdown game when you played UAB. But no, it's so weird. I don't understand how this happened. This was another one of my picks. LSU was just a better team, and how you lose by like 15 points to this team that's like
Dysfunctional.
yeah dysfunctional, a team that is likely looking to fire their head coach at some point in the near future. Like I don't even know, but yeah, no, it it's going to make for a very entertaining 2023, and I think Jimbo's going to start the season on the hot seat. But again, for some like to some degree, this allows you to burn off a couple extra years of contract, right? Like so now the pressure is going to be mid 2023, and then you can fire him, and then so we'll have to see. Maybe they get a new a new offensive coordinator who does a different offense. We'll have to see, but probably not.
Yeah, skeptical. I'll just keep
Skeptical.
it at that.
Press
Yeah.
X to doubt. Yeah.
Yeah. Other SEC game worth noting: Tennessee beats Vandy 56-0. What stood out to me on this one is like Joe Milton got 7 yards per pass attempt, which just doesn't seem possible in that for Joe Milton in a Tennessee offense. It seems like either he would throw for 10 per attempt or just go super Joe Milton and have like 5. 7 is very average slash okay, which is kind of like saying you've got a bipolar person who on average is happy.
Mm-hmm.
It just it I don't see that all the time. I just really weird. And it was exactly 7 yards per attempt.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. It is weird. But Yeah, I mean, I thought Vandy would put up a bit more of a fight against Tennessee, but cause, yeah, Vandy beat Florida last week. Like some of
Yeah.
these results are so weird. You're like, oh, Vandy beats Florida, and then the next week turns around and like just gets obliterated by Tennessee with their backup quarterback, by the way. So,
Yeah, it kind of knocks out one of the legs of Tennessee's argument, and not that anybody was believing it, where they were saying, "Oh yeah, Georgia, that game was in the rain, so you can't really hold it against us." This game was it was pouring in this game. I don't know if you saw it was raining a lot harder against Vandy. Um, I don't know. Going out on a limb here, I think probably the quality of opponent has something to do with that more than the weather.
mhm,
Um, Another SEC/ACC game. Florida State beats Florida 45-38. Anthony Richardson ends the season completing less than 54% of his passes, 9 interceptions. They got a commitment. They flipped a guy that was committed, I think, to Miami, Jaden Rashada, a quarterback from California. I'm thinking that at some point that kid's going to start next year. I think Anthony Richardson might be like kind of like a almost like a wildcat guy. I'm thinking maybe next year
mhm.
for the Gators.
Well, I mean, they keep I keep hearing like NFL draft buzz, so it's possible Richardson might go to the NFL, which is
What?
I keep hearing him on people's NFL draft boards.
Boy.
Like the thing is, see, this is the thing, right? Because we look at a guy like we look at C.J. Stroud, and like before this week, we were like, oh man, he's just amazing, right? He gets all these touchdown passes, and Bryce Young's okay. Like when we look at and winning college games, we look at different things that we evaluate. But like NFL draft scouts, like they have like Will Levis as like a top 15-ish pick. Like they're like debating whether or not Will Levis should be picked in the top 10 or not because they
Yeah, I think if I have an NFL team, I'm just not picking a quarterback this year.
well, the thing is, some have to, but the thing is, they look at Will Levis and they think he's Josh Allen 2.0.
Mm,
The thing is, they're not looking at stats; they're looking at traits. They're like, okay, he's got big
yeah.
size. He's like they look at certain. They're like, oh, he's kind of like Josh Allen 2.0. So therefore, if like it's weird. They look at completely different things, which is one of the reasons why you can make a lot of money on the NFL draft if you know what you're doing. Like if you evaluate it through, like it's weird. Like it's like you play one game and then in the NFL you then drafted to play a completely different game, even though it's actually the same game. So
Yeah. I don't get the NFL, and that's probably one reason. I don't know.
we'll
I
have to
thought
see.
Josh Allen was going to be a horrible quarterback. So what do I know when it comes to the NFL?
Hmm.
Um, the other side of this, Florida State, they had a 3 game losing streak where they lost to Wake and NC State and Clemson, and then after that, they've just played with a lot of confidence, and it seems like they've been. Even though they're ranked, I think 13th in the latest playoff rankings, it seems like there's been so little buzz about them that I think they kind of went through their whole learning how to win these games phase with when nobody noticed.
Yeah.
I mentioned last year my eyes on them, for next year, even more so. Just they really just have like the whole confidence and great body language and swagger that I like. So this game really confirmed it. It shouldn't have been this close at the end, but rivalry game, weird things can happen at the end. So
Well, this is one of the ones where like Florida State probably deserves to be there, but if you go on the whole resume ranking things, they probably shouldn't be that highly ranked. But again, they just they make up whatever they want to put, right? They're like, ah, we'll rank Florida State 13th. Like Clemson shouldn't be ninth either, because like how many games did Clemson? Like Clemson is ninth right now for some reason. How many?
yeah,
Oh, actually, never mind. We'll talk about Clemson
yeah,
right now.
I've
So go
I've
ahead.
I've
Yeah.
got some great information on that in
Okay, go
part
ahead with
two.
Clemson. Then we'll have a rant on Clemson. Go ahead.
Okay, speaking of Clemson, they lost to South Carolina 31-30. DJU 8 of 29 for 99 yards. Couldn't quite get triple digits on that. I think at this point I'm gonna give like the worst backhanded compliment I can to the horrible offensive staff at Clemson because they've somehow managed around their own horrible player development and managed to win some games, if that makes sense. Um, it's kind of like the best case of what Iowa should be doing, where it's like, okay, we don't know what we're doing, but we'll kind of just fix it as we go along and just make it up on the fly and do
Hmm.
something. And, you know, they're just wasting talent. But credit question mark to them for kind of working around it and getting wins.
Yeah, I mean, on some level, it's kind of insane, right? Like, you've got this team that's that like it's clearly good defensively and has some offensive pieces, but their quarterback is just horrendous. And like they've still coached themselves like a 10-2 record, right? And
Uh,
somehow top 10. Like I don't understand how that's possible. But like, and again, like, what if they had a good quarterback? Like if they had a good quarterback, yeah, this team is this team's in the playoff right now. Like you basically add a whole score to some of those games, and yeah, you're beating Florida by like 10 points. You're blowing Syracuse out as you should have, right? Like there's a lot of pieces to this where if you had a decent quarterback and if they can get one through the transfer portal, but like, are they going to be back with DJ again? Like, remember, this is the problem with Dabble, right? Dabble's like, no, he's like, and it's come out, he's very much against the transfer portal. He's like, nope, we're not going to do that. So this is the problem. If you've got a coach who's like, no, we're not going to pay players, well, then you get DJ, right?
mm-hmm.
That's who you get because that's how this system works. So it, if you're stuck with a guy because you refuse to pay a different guy, then that's the ceiling. That's a ceiling that Dabble puts on the team, and an issue with the coach too.
In those internal promotions, I'm never a big fan of that. If you're a big time program and you just do these internal promotions when your coordinators leave, you're begging for problems. That's that's what did USC in, but they were hardly unique in that. You see that all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Another ACC game. Duke beats Wake Forest straight up. We both had the Blue Devils there. Takes them to 8-4 on the year, tied for second in the Coastal Division. Although, as we've said a couple times, they had the best point differential in the Coastal in conference games. Crazy stat. Their 4 losses are by a combined 16 points.
Wow.
Yeah, Mike Elko. I don't have one coach of the year, but we're gonna have probably in a future episode something where I do stuff for coaches and whatever, like list of awesome coaching jobs. He's making that this year. 8 wins. They're gonna get a nice bowl bid. I'm good for them because I don't know if you remember, like their week 1 game against Temple, they were only favored by like 6 or so, and we just pointed to that as like I think what we call like a price discovery game where like we have no idea,
Mm-hmm.
nobody does, and it's going to take an average of a lot of disparate opinions and land on some crazy number. But man, they found an identity on both sides of the ball too.
Yeah, this team was a good upset team. Remember, we won a lot of games betting on this team as big dogs, and against Wake, it's so weird. Wake Forest just completely collapsed. Right? We both saw this game last week, and this was, I believe, a combined model play.
Yeah,
And like this line, like just looking at this line was so fishy. Like 3.5 against Wake Forest. Like, oh, Wake Forest will just blow them out. But nope, we were on Duke, and Duke sure enough, like Duke actually was in control most of this game. I think near the end, Wake Forest took the lead, but then Duke got it back. But no, such a fun Duke team. We're going to see them in a really good bowl game, and I'm excited for that and see what they can do next year.
yeah. Especially in year 2 of familiarity of that defense too, and who knows like what kind of other stuff that they can do once everybody's got the 1 year into that defense
Yeah.
under their belt. Another ACC game. Pitt beats Miami 42-16. It just we're at this point where like Mario is like the just insane adolescent teenager who comes home with like half of his head shaved, the other half is dyed green because we just don't know what's going on anymore. I Miami had 3 quarterbacks throw passes. Jake Garcia throws 27, Tyler Van Dyke 8, and the Ja'Cory Brown, I think it is, threw 3. The 2 with the fewest each threw an interception. And this is what I'm talking about with Mario. He's doing this. He's having these crazy results where you just kind of look at it and say, I wonder if that's been done before, or like was that done like since World War II? Just these weird things that you just can't even imagine.
Yeah.
It just he's really taken it to another. It used to be just like okay, stupid stuff. They lose a game they shouldn't because he forgets how many timeouts he has. This is just another dimension.
Again, so this team is 5-7, so we are spared from a Miami ball bid. Huge issues at quarterback. Huge issues on both other sides of the ball. Maybe this team can improve next year. Again, we were only like a couple of months ago people were talking, like serious NFL people were talking about where Tyler Van Dyke is going to go in the NFL. And that's not happening anymore. It's crazy just the chaos that has happened at this school this year, and
Yeah.
there's no real answer for why any of this happened or how any of this happened. And it's like, again, so, like, I don't know. I'm at a loss for words. Right, this team looked like it had so much promise, and even Manny Diaz had this team performing a lot better. Like, I think
A lot better.
yeah,
Yeah.
Miami, like, Diaz made a bowl last year. I think. Yeah, I remember. I think he did make a bowl last year. Like, they looked a lot better, and they've just looked horrendous. And again, like, there have been some absolutely crushing losses for this team. Like, when they lost to Texas A&M was one, but then they lost to Middle Tennessee State. That was another one. Um, and like, but then the losses have just gotten worse. Like, 30-point loss to Clemson last week. The week, like, 2 weeks ago, the week then this week, another 20 some odd point loss to Pittsburgh. Like, just the losses have just gotten worse and worse. And like, sure, they were able to, actually, okay, this is how they got to, they beat both Virginias, and they beat Georgia Tech, and they beat Southern Miss and Bethune. So that's how you get to five. That's not a great way to get to five, though.
Yeah. One of those five being a 4 overtime win against Virginia by a score of 12-10, if I remember correctly.
14-12.
14-12. My bad. Sorry,
Yeah,
I I undersold the Hurricanes by 2 points.
just an
Um,
amazing way to win a game, 14-12. I like,
yeah,
crazy. Like,
I heard one. I don't remember which podcast it was, but somebody was saying, "Well, you can kind of see what Mario's done. He doesn't think his players are tough enough, and he's just kind of tearing it down." To go back to the prior game we talked about, why is it that he has to do that, inheriting a much more talented roster when Mike Elko doesn't have to do that at Duke? Did
mhm.
Duke have like a sneaky awesome talent and a bunch of kids that are tougher than Miami guys? No, just Mike Elko's a good coach, and Mario is not Mike Elko.
Well, I think he's probably locked in for like, they can't fire him for probably a
Yeah,
couple years.
we don't know because Miami's a private school, but the reports are like 8 years, 10 million per year. So I looked. There's one nation, and their annual GDP is less than the total value of Jimbo plus Mario's contract. So I think maybe something just like give that island nation to those two and let them split it up instead of actually like laying out cash.
There probably is some country with that. I would not be surprised. Yeah.
The smallest world economy, yeah, economy in the world is. It's only one. I took some digging. Number two, actually, you have to throw in like a James Franklin or at least another Mel Tucker or
Mel
something
Tucker, I
like
was about to
that.
say Mel Tucker. But yeah, we'll get there eventually. With inflation, you'll get there.
Yeah. Um, Big 12 games. West Virginia beats Oklahoma State 24-19. Texas beats Baylor 38-27. Couple of quick reactions. Oklahoma State finishes with a losing conference record, even though they were ranked number 9 at one point. And Texas outscored Baylor 21-7 in the second half. Does that mean they've turned it around? No, that just means that the game was in Austin. So I'm still planting my flag on the Sark's going to Sark until he doesn't Sark anymore.
This was kind of crazy. So, like, this Oklahoma State game, I bet it. I think it was a model play or a pick for mine, and then literally right before game time, like, there was just massive injuries for this Oklahoma State team,
Mm-hmm.
and they let me bet it again at seven, like West Virginia plus 7.5. I'm like, okay. I just doubled down, and then this was at the same time as Michigan game. I was just cleaning house. Like, I was just seeing like West Virginia scoring points and Michigan scoring points. I'm like, this is great. This is going well for me. Um, but yeah, again, we we said, and again, we have to pat ourselves in the back for this. We said Oklahoma was insanely fraudulent. We were like, this team is horrendous. They barely beat a MAC team, and then people, they were like ranked ninth, and they have a losing conference record now. Like, it is insane. Like, again, it shows like early season rankings are just worthless. Like, the only reason they were even ranked that high was because they beat Notre Dame in a bowl last year. Like,
Yeah, I think I'm kind of curious about this. Give me a second to look this up. Dang it, I'm not going to be able to find it. I think that Central Michigan finished with a losing record too. That
oh,
that team that they only beat by 14, who was beat by a similar margin by South Alabama.
mm,
Um, Also, just to kind of wrap up Texas thing, I don't know if you remember about a month ago, you
yeah,
were talking about the insanely low price on
it was
Texas to win the Big 12,
two to
like
one.
plus 220 or something
Yeah,
like
it was
that.
like 2 to 1, 2 or 3 to 1. Just
Yeah.
insane.
So I threw out 15-1, and
Yeah,
I cleaned up. I just in mythically I got all kinds of money coming in on the bad Texas and their horrible coach. So
yeah. I mean,
I had a mythical nice steak dinner with all
yeah,
my winnings on that.
that would have been insane. I mean, I think there are sites where you can like say like, oh, I want to bet not Texas. Like you probably made it as a bet for someone, and someone definitely would have like taken us up on that. But yeah, no, like it's just crazy that we were both like, this line is so insanely wrong. We would gladly take bets on higher than that, and then we were both right on that. That was so crazy.
And
Um,
yeah, I want to work that into some kind of segment in next year's pod where, and I want to pick on DraftKings because they're the worst. They're
mhm.
dopey and their CEO is a joke. He like is blaming everything on short sellers. So I like to just really goof on them. So we got to figure out something where basically we put me against them and figure out where I can just set better lines than them and just embarrass them because I'm an arrogant idiot CPA from California who does this in his spare time, and just if I can embarrass them, even better.
Yeah, that
That
that'd be an interesting segment for next year. Like set the price of different things happening because like usually because sometimes for college football some of those prices are really bad. So like
yeah,
I mean we can make better prices for stuff like that Texas 2-1 was insane. I have no idea why that was there. That should not have been there at all.
yeah,
And it was so clear that TCU was going to beat Texas, and they actually beat them pretty sound. Like just crazy. Um, moving on.
yeah. Okay, one Pac-12 game. Arizona beats Arizona State 38-35. Um, maybe the last time I'll have to talk about this Arizona defense. My guy Johnny Nansen, who should be looking for a new job if Arizona is going to be serious. His defense gave up 378 yards to one half of the Bourget duo. Walk-on quarterback Trenton Bourget for the Sun Devils throws for almost 380 in a losing effort.
Yeah, this was I had Arizona -4, so rip that one. Again, never should I should have never bet on Arizona covering a spread because of their horrendous defense. Um, but yeah, I mean it's so sad. I don't think this Arizona team didn't make a bowl. I don't think.
No, they went 5-7.
Yeah, it's rough. Like they should have made a bowl, but they did not, and that's sad. But
It's tough. I mean, it's sneaky tough year for not tough, sneaky good year for the Pac-12.
yeah,
I think if you throw Arizona in the north and they just get the free bingo squares against both Cal and Stanford, they probably make a bowl.
yeah, definitely. I mean, like I don't think did they play Colorado?
Yeah, they're both in the south.
They got caught. Well, the Pac-12 isn't divisioned anymore.
They scheduled on the old division structure though.
Huh.
It's almost like yeah,
That's weird. All right, so but yeah, I mean, this team should have made a bowl. This team was actually a pretty good team, but the problem is like their schedule was rough. Like they had to play USC, Utah. They played USC. They actually did. They beat. They played UCLA. They did beat actually. They actually did beat UCLA. They had to play Oregon. They had to play
it's the
Washington
Mississippi
State.
State game is the killer. They shouldn't have scheduled
Yeah,
them out of conference. They
not
should have
scheduled
just
an SEC team.
well, they should have picked somebody from the state to the east of them. I'm sure that they would have easier time with New Mexico or New Mexico State.
Yeah, that would have
So,
been easier. Yeah, there definitely was an easier non-conference schedule than Mississippi State. That was Mississippi State was good. That was their problem. They should have scheduled
yep.
Mississippi State when they were bad. But
And San Diego State, who
yeah,
I think is a little fraudulent, but they won 8 games, and North Dakota State, who's like the best FCS team traditionally. So bad job
yeah,
by them. They did themselves in. Mountain West, Boise State beats Utah State 42-23. This is really weird because in early October, there's no way we would have thought, hey, Boise's going to make the title game for the Mountain West, and Utah State's going to make a bowl. I don't know if you saw that. They're actually qualified for a bowl. Um, Dug in a little deeper. Their season turned around when they dropped I think it was Blake or that Bonner kid who transferred from Arkansas State with the coach, and they put in this Cooper Legis guy as a starter. They went 5-2 in his starts. The only losses were to BYU and Boise. Um, and I don't know if you remember this in last year's Jimmy Kimmel Bowl. This kid, he came in after their starter got hurt. His first pass ever was like a 90-yard touchdown pass, just his first snap under center. So they got something there. Utah State, we kind of expected some regression. Maybe they kind of bounce back next year, and they make a bowl game, which I think I'm still just surprised by.
that's pretty crazy. Yeah, but
You know,
pretty interesting though.
Yep. Another Mountain West game. Colorado State 17, New Mexico 0. Just kind of wrapping up an open thread here that after firing their offensive coordinator, New Mexico State managed all of 41 points in the last 6 games. That's almost one touchdown a game. Clapping for you guys. Good job.
Not great. Not great.
No. In the MAC, Western Michigan 20, Toledo 14. This is just content rich stuff. Toledo loses to a horrible Western Michigan team. I have Western Michigan fifth worst in all of FBS. And so they lose that and they back into the MAC title game. Great job, Jason Candle. My guy, my other guy, Western Michigan, Jack Salopek became back. There's no news on this. They just Western Michigan quarterback situation is just either shrouded in mystery or indifference. We don't really know,
Mm-hmm.
but he had a very Jack Salopek game, going 7 of 21 for 54 yards. I just leave this game thinking, what would Jason Candle be without he always has the best talent. What if he just what if they stuck him at Akron or something instead, where they didn't have just a better history?
Yeah.
He'd probably go 2-10. And they'd fire him after the second season.
Yeah. No, like this Toledo team is just like they really did backdoor their way into they backed their way into the conference championship game. I like it's crazy. The MAC has been just a dumpster fire this year. Just
Yeah.
which is again that's why we love the MAC. Um, but no, like it's just such a like the basically Toledo and Eastern Michigan have the same record. Actually, Eastern Michigan is actually nine. Is actually 8-4. So like they should be better, but like it's crazy. Like my model weirdly likes Toledo, but then they just randomly have games where they just we're gonna suck this game. So yeah, don't bet on us. But they don't tell us that beforehand though. So but
No,
yeah
that's just truly the sign of the really poorly coached team is
yeah.
yep, stinker alert just from out of nowhere. Just
Mm-hmm.
just as like we saw here. Another MAC game, Akron 44, Northern Illinois 12. Northern Illinois caps off that severe regression that I'd expected before the season. My first ticket to cash, it cashed, I think, like the first weekend of October, under season wins. Akron quarterback, what an awesome name. Jeff Undercuffler.
Hmm.
Great name. His first start under Joe Moorhead goes 21 of 32 for over 300 yards. I had mentioned before that the Akron passing game was showing signs of life. This guy started some games last year. I don't know if he was hurt until now or he just had gotten buried on the depth chart, but Akron, another team, I'm kind of just, data points to kind of present some optimism for next year, for year two of Joe Moorhead.
Yeah, this Akron team again. We talked about them before. We're like, hey, this team is actually a bit scrappy, and then they immediately lost the next game and didn't cover the spread. But again, they because of the game that was delayed because of weather, they actually do get another shot this week. They get to play Buffalo in what is functionally a bowl game for both of them. Buffalo needs to win this game to qualify for a bowl. So that's I'm assuming why this game is happening versus some of the other games that were canceled and
Oh, that's
just
right. Yeah, they've won 5 games. I forgot about that.
so. But yeah, no, this Akron team could deny this Buffalo team a bowl, which would be weird. But fun. It would be
I thought
fun.
I thought you meant that this is actually a bowl, just like the Bahamas Bowl. Like, yeah, I go to Buffalo or the Bahamas in December. They're kind of the same.
Yeah, I mean it could be functionally a bowl game. There's also some dispute as to when this game actually is. ESPN says it's at 1 o'clock. My
Yeah,
sportsbook says it's at 7:30, or my sportsbook says it's 8 o'clock. So, but some of my sportsbooks say it's 8. Some of them say it's at 1. So there's some debate, but I suspect it's at 1. But we'll
yeah,
see.
that might affect maybe 500 people in terms of everybody that's playing and watching that game.
If you're in, is this in Akron or Buffalo?
It's in Buffalo. That's what I
Oh,
remember.
okay.
They had that big storm in Buffalo a few weeks ago.
Oh, yeah, that's right. It would be an Akron then. Yeah. So if you're in Buffalo and you don't want to watch the Pac-12 conference championship game, then you could go see Akron versus Buffalo.
Well, you can do both. It
Actually,
starts like
yeah. If
7 hours before.
that's right. Yeah. So if it does start at 1, you can do this. It's a double header. You can
Yeah, it's kind of like if you want to spend your whole Friday drinking and watching
yeah.
football. This is like the way you start it.
I live, as people know, I live relatively close to Buffalo on this side of the border. It is very cold here now, so go watch this game and then get home and get warm and watch the Pac-12 championship game. So
Yep. One Sun Belt game to comment on. James Madison beats Coastal 47-7. Coastal is just not the same without Grayson McCall.
Hmm.
It's not even close.
I saw some people in line were like, because I think the spread was like 15 and a half or something. It was like two full scores, and they're like, "Oh, that's tempting for Coastal." And like, it's not because
No.
they don't have McCall. My model had it higher. I didn't want to pull the trigger on it, but I was like, like sometimes you just say no, I'm not going to be part of that, and because I do like Coastal. Coastal's a pretty cool team, and I'm sad that they're being really crushed right now because their loss of because of their loss of the quarterback. Also, it's actually funny. I'm just looking at the standings now. James Madison is actually has a better conference record than them, but because they're ineligible for the postseason, that's
Yeah.
why Coastal is in the. Gotta love that weird, stupid rule. But
Yeah, and just 30 seconds on just how dumb that is. James Madison was ineligible for the FCS playoffs last year because they had announced they were going to go, and that's already kind of your exit fee that you're going to pay. Is that they act like petulant little third graders and don't let you play in their playoffs because you're too good for them. Why you have to reproduce that punishment? They've suffered enough.
mm,
I mean, just I don't know, really really stupid. Um, American Eastern Carolina 49, Temple 46. Another guy that's going up the charts. You might remember the name EJ Warner. He debuted on the bum list about a month and a half ago at number 1, and since then he has just completely turned around. Threw for over 500 yards on 63 attempts. In the month of November, he's had a QB plus of 196.
wow.
That's like Baker Mayfield territory. Um, my whole thing when Temple had started the season for through most of October was Stan Drayton's an offensive guy and their offense sucks. Stan Drayton might actually be onto something here. I just this came out of nowhere. Was not expecting this at all.
Yeah, Temple's gonna be the team where like week one they're gonna be like, it's gonna be like Temple plus 7.5. People are gonna be like, that's bad. Well, they're gonna get crushed, and we'll be like, maybe not. So that's
No, this is like we're hoping like Temple plays like Miami or Texas A&M.
that would
That's
be
what we
great.
hope for.
That will be like pound Temple or like 100%. So
Yeah, and
that
speaking of the underdog punching way above its weight class, New Mexico State, my guy Jerry Kill, 49, Liberty 14, led by now Auburn head coach Hugh Freeze. Good job, Auburn. Well done. Happy for you. Way to make a great hire with Hugh Freeze. Going into this game, New Mexico State, I had them 119th in all of FBS on offense. They scored 49 points. You might remember after week 0, there was a handful of games, so we had very thin material.
yeah.
I dug into this guy Diego Pavia and just his horrible statistics and just how awful he was. He went 16 of 21 for over 210 yards, over 10 yards per attempt against Hugh Freeze's defense, and now Hugh Freeze again is coaching Auburn. I don't know like who's left with more questions here, Auburn or Liberty. Um, I kind of have some ideas on who the next Liberty coach is going to be, seeing who the last guy was. Wondering if you're thinking the same. Don't know if you know who Liberty's athletic director is.
No.
He was at Baylor, and if they hired Hugh Freeze, I don't think they'd have any problem of hiring former Baylor coach Art Briles and all the
Mm,
baggage that he brings.
yeah. Well, yeah.
Keep an eye on that.
They're the Catholic school that hired Hugh Freeze,
Uh,
right? Or
uh,
sorry, not Catholic.
Protestant,
Sorry, I confuse those
evangelical.
sometimes. Yes,
Yeah.
evangelical school. Sorry, that's me being Catholic and from Canada. I sometimes confuse those, but no, yes, very different. Evangelicals definitely not Catholics. As a Catholic myself, but no, yes, they're the evangelical school that hired Hugh Freeze. Again, this is insane. Like, if you're like, okay, we want Lane Kiffin, which first of all, that's extremely like in terms of the Auburn hire, you like we want Lane Kiffin, which first of all, that's actually somewhat questionable too because they played relatively easy schedules, and then when they played decent teams, they got crushed. So that's extremely questionable as to wanting to hire Lane Kiffin right off the bat. Anyways, but then okay, Lane Kiffin turns you down. Okay, so then we're gonna go to option two, which is Hugh Freeze. Like, I don't understand what this obsession with Auburn is, and like, why are they trying to hire people who have just beaten Nick Saban once or twice? Like, I like because Lane Kiffin I think has beaten or came close to beating. He came close to beating them this year. I think Lane
Yeah.
Kiffin, but like you're trying to fight the last. Like we talk about this in politics a lot, like trying to win the last war. Nick Saban is not immortal. he will one day not be the head coach of Alabama. It actually could be relatively soon. This Alabama team was not as good as it's been in the past.
Yeah.
Like, obviously Alabama's not. I'm not suggesting Alabama's going to go through a period of rebuilding. They're not going to miss a bowl game anytime soon, or miss a conference championship game anytime, or not miss competing for a conference championship game anytime soon. But like at a certain point, like if Nick Saban puts together another really good team, and then he's like, yeah, we're going to be going through a rebuilding year. That's it. I'm gone. And he could do that. He could retire, be the best coach ever. Why are you hiring a guy who's mediocre against every other team, but just gotten lucky against beating Bama once or twice? Like, that's insane. Why would you not try to go for someone who's a consistent coach who continually wins games and innovates? Like, again, we mentioned this before. We called them, I think, Auburn United. Like, this is the most EPL thing. Rehiring a coach that got fired at another EPL team. Like, the SEC West is literally just the EPL. People need to realize this, that this is basically what the SEC West is. Like, they just keep recycling the same coaches over and over again. It's like, well, like, the prerequisite to being an SEC West coach is, were you an SEC West coach before? That's it.
It this is not a comment on the geography or the people of any state or region. This is very specific to the people that influence the decision making in Auburn. Those people are not the most forward looking people. I think to your point about why are they fighting the last war, because that's the way their necks are turned.
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
it's just, and again, the other thing is, if you don't get your first choice and your second choice just lost to New Mexico State by multiple scores, do you not think for a second? Be like, huh, maybe we shouldn't do this. Like, and then now they're like, oh, we're just going to like, oh, we're not worried about like they have blown through so many things. They're like, oh, we're not worried about the past and the stuff from the like. This is insane. Like, they are like, this is not going to go well. They think this is going to go well, and they're just blinding themselves because this guy has beaten Alabama twice, which that apparently is the only qualification to being a head coach in the SEC West. It's weird. Like, I think is basically the entire SEC West just coaches who have beaten Alabama once, and the entire SEC East like people who have worked under Nick Saban before.
I think that's where you can start with and just fill in the gaps from there.
Because like I think Billy Napier was once an assistant for Alabama.
He was,
Kirby Smart
yes,
was Alabama as well.
yep.
Uh, who else? Did Bob
Heupel
Stu?
has Heupel has
No, he's
no
not from.
connection.
No, okay, no connection for Bama. But like, there's probably others. Like, it's just it's crazy that like the entire SEC West just keeps like it's just this revolving door. Like,
Yeah,
it's
it's
crazy.
it is. I'm not going to give Auburn the Auburn United title yet, but it's right there. It's just I'm very close to unveiling the banner. I just need that one moment. They're very close right now,
It'll
but
come. It'll come.
we
Don't
just
worry.
need that one thing where they yeah, it's just yeah,
They'll lose to
it's
like
inevitable.
I don't know who the schedule. Actually, we don't have schedules yet, but there's gonna be a team that they're gonna randomly lose to next year, and then we could be like, okay, now they're Auburn United. Well, just wait for it. Just it'll happen.
Or just whatever kind of baggage from freeze that surfaces or newly comes about. Who knows? I mean, it's just very content rich again, material in Auburn
Mm-hmm.
as always. Um, all right, just one thing on my metrics for players. QB, nothing really new there, but for wide receivers, I have a new top receiver, and I had not been familiar with this name before. Jamari Thrash of Georgia State. Georgia State had a big win, and this guy must have just torn it up. And I think he's an underclassman. So I remember Georgia State seeing their quarterback had a pretty good season. So depending on who they return, they might be worth keeping an eye on next year. They had a pretty rough schedule. I think they went winless in their non-conference games. I don't know if they went up making a bowl, but if they are able to schedule a little more sensibly, they might be worth watching next year as well.
Mm-hmm.
All right, USC update. USC beats Notre Dame 38-27 at home. My model was really close on here. I had it 36-26 USC. Caleb Williams kind of won the Heisman Trophy. My guy's not even taking future bets on the Heisman anymore. I read somewhere. Did you tell me that like
It was
you
20.
saw
It was like
someplace minus 2200?
minus 25. Yeah, 2200. I think I saw a couple 20 minus 2500s. So
Wow. Yeah.
I
Since go ahead.
yeah, I'll just kind of mention on that too. I had Caleb Williams at plus 400.
Wow.
I pulled it. I pulled it for max profit. He probably has won it. I'm fortunate that I do have a book that allows you to cash out. I figured it was like I basically took everything except for like $14. I left $14 on the table. That's okay. I'll
Yeah.
take that. I think because in the event that like something bad happens and he loses, I worry that it's now going to be like, oh, let's give it to like C.J. Stroud or something. So I'd rather leave $14 on the table than lose it all. So that's what I'll say. But I think he has won the Heisman though. I believe he has.
Yeah, agree. His last kind of so-so game was against Washington State at home. USC won that pretty easily, but he was not that great. But since then, his QB plus is 165, which is just not otherworldly, but it's about like as good as it gets for quarterbacks. Not named DJ Warner, I guess. Apparently,
Mm-hmm.
USC's offense, I have them fifth in all of FBS. The defense is 65th, a little bit of a drop. I don't think Drew Pine had an incompletion until like the middle of the fourth quarter. That was
Mm-hmm.
frustrating, but seems like the defense kind of just can kind of slow down one part and just allow the other team to do another thing. It's not ideal. They stopped a really good running game in Zach Charbonnet at UCLA, and I think they just said, okay, Notre Dame's not going to run on us. They give up less than 100 yards rushing, so there's some ability to stop some stuff at some times to really couch it in very indefinite terms. But just whatever they let go, really they let go on defense. Um, I have them ranked first overall in the Pac-12, ahead of UCLA and Oregon, 15th overall in FBS, dragged down by the defense. It's kind of hard to really quantify just how much magic there is in Caleb and the offense that puts opponents in such a bad position to start with. This week against Utah in the Pac-12 game, last I have is 3. Does that sound right?
Yeah, it's three.
Okay.
I've seen a couple 2.5s, but I think it's mostly three. Yeah.
So Utah, they're not really great at anything. They're fifth in the Pac-12 in offense. They're second in defense, but they're 45th in all of FBS. Kind of a really bad year for the Pac-12 in terms of defenses. So, don't think the Utah defense is anything special. This is a story that's really gone completely unreported. I can't really find anything about it. So, after Utah beat USC in October, they had the week off and they came back for a Thursday night game against Washington State. And Rising didn't play. He went through warm ups and said he wasn't right, and everybody lost their crap, and people were crying about why wasn't this reported, and I lost money, blah blah blah, and all this wailing and stuff. Um, and it was really hidden, and there was no real details about what went on there. This is what's interesting. Since that game, his QB plus is 69, which is bumbless territory.
Mm-hmm.
Not just that. Listen to these teams that he played: Arizona, Stanford, Colorado, literally the 3 worst defenses in the conference, and then Oregon, who really can be obliging at time to time. And if you saw that Oregon game, he was just missing some open guys and not even coming close. Um, there's something really wrong here, and I haven't seen anybody just say, just point it out because they've only lost. I think they're undefeated in those last 4 games. Yeah, they beat all 4 of those teams, or no, they lost to Oregon, close one. I think this is just news that is kind of unrecognized, I guess I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Tight end Dalton Kincaid, who a lot of people might remember, received for like 200 and some yards against USC. He was unstoppable. He's been hurt a few times, and he got hurt at the end of the first half last week, and he didn't play in the second half. And his status is doubtful, or is unknown, I guess I'd say, but it didn't look good on Saturday. Also, before their game last week, their leading rusher, Tavion Thomas, announced that his Utah career is over because he had a toe injury. Um, this is just a team that looks like it's leaking serious oil in terms of roster.
Mm-hmm.
Just to go back to Dalton Kincaid, he's really talented. He was their number 2 tight end. If you remember that Florida game, Brian Keithy, their best receiver, I think he got hurt in that game, and he's been out for the rest of the season. So now you're going down to your 3rd tight end when tight end is really your best position in terms of any kind of threat. My model has this USC 36-32. I think that there's just too much of good Cam Rising. There's too much Tavian Thomas and too much Dalton Kincaid in those numbers. So I think my model's being a little too generous to Utah, and I like USC by more than the 3 here.
That's fair. My model does have. Utah. I think it has Utah as small favorites, 3-point favorites. But at the same time, though, my model is probably doing good Cameron Rising rather than kind of bad Cameron Rising. So I do think USC wins, but I can't ignore the fact that this game will be pretty close, and we can't ignore the fact that Utah can win this game, right? So,
Yeah,
but I do think USC wins it, and I'm rooting for USC. I want USC to win this game. This game was really fun last time. The Utah USC was a great game,
it
decided
was.
by
Yeah.
a 2 point conversion basically at the end of the game. Would love to see another game like that, especially on a great Friday night. It's gonna be great. I'm excited for this game on Friday.
And literally, who besides like just the kookiest USC fans would think, yeah, going to the conference championship weekend, USC is going to be more relevant than Alabama.
Yeah,
Ridiculous.
just crazy. Yeah,
All right. I don't. We're gonna get into more coaching things, and in another episode later. But just a couple of quick hits. Wisconsin, I forgive you. I was really angry. I take you back because firing Paul Christ to get Jim Leonard was stupid. You got Luke Fickle, so an
yeah.
awesome, awesome hire. You
I
got a guy with a much better resume, so I forgive you. I take you back, baby.
completely approve. I'm actually I saw that, and this is actually great. I absolutely love this. A little concerned for Cincinnati now, about to walk into the jungle that is the Big 12, and potentially just get completely slaughtered. But shout out to Finkel. He's now in the Big 10, and I believe the Big 10 is going to go divisionless in a year or two. I think for
When
now.
USC and UCLA joined in 24.
Yeah. So okay. So 1 year with divisions, he could probably again if if Graham Mertz is not the quarterback for Wisconsin next year, I don't see how they're not the favorites in this division. Like they have the talent. The problem
Yeah,
with Wisconsin has never been the talent. Like they have good running backs, they have a good defense. The problem has always been the offense. And if they can, like specifically in terms of the quarterback, if they can actually fix that and actually have a decent quarterback, this team could be very terrifying. And I think they could potentially give Ohio State a run for their money, or even Michigan a run for their money too. So yeah, shout out for that. Again, there was an article in the Athletic, just a hilarious turn of phrase here. When basically in the article for the Athletic, the writer said that if they could bring in competition for Graham Mertz, but it's risky because they could lose Graham Mertz. And I'm like, that's a new definition of the word risk that only involves positive outcomes. Like it's
yeah,
like, oh, it's risky. Either a good thing could happen or an even better thing could happen. Like I don't understand how that's a risk. Like that's a new definition of risky. Of different outcomes could happen. That's not what that's not what the word risky means. Risky implies a downside, not a oh well, only good things can happen. That's just baffling to me that article.
yeah. As they say in software development, that's a feature, not a bug.
Yeah,
Um,
like getting rid of bringing someone in Grant Mertz transferring is like great. That's a good thing. That's a positive. That's a feature. That's not a bug. That's great. So
you know what would be a fascinating? I don't know if we mentioned that he's in the transfer portal. What if Wisconsin got Alex Padilla just as like some kind of weird, just to see like, okay, this guy in a normal offense with a normal coach, what happens? That would just be an awesome experiment.
well, they probably need a backup quarterback.
Yeah, I'd love to see him as a starter, just as like a boy. Just how bad is, who's that guy? They call him Chuck Sizzle, Charlie Strong for Purdue.
Hmm.
I think he caught like 3 passes in his entire Iowa career, and he's probably going to make like all conference now as a wide receiver for Purdue.
Yeah.
So, all right, another Big Ten West hire. Nebraska hires Matt Rule. I like this. You were a little skeptical. You brought Colorado or Carolina up and how bad he was. I want to kind of give a little context. He did a great job at Baylor, and this is what I really wanted to point out. He was so good at Temple that Jeff Collins succeeded him and just didn't screw things up, and Jeff Collins rode that to the Georgia Tech job.
And then failed immediately.
Yeah, he built a very good sustainable program at Temple.
I think that's fair, and that's an important thing to look at. I'm still a little skeptical. I'm gonna have to look and see I mean, Matt Rule definitely did some questionable plays, but to be honest, in Carolina, he did kind of inherit a really bad situation. They never did a full rebuild, which is kind of essential in the NFL. In college, you don't really have to do a full rebuild. You can kind of like just keep going, right? You can just keep adding good players to the transfer portal. You can't like you can't add like a quarterback in the transfer portal in the NFL. That's not how that works. You can't just like appear a quarterback. Like, oh, cool, here's a quarterback. Like, you need to get a quarterback, and you usually have to get that through the draft. Like,
Yeah.
they never had a like. They basically the second he came in, they wanted to move on from Cam Newton. They got Teddy Bridgewater. That didn't work. So they got rid of Teddy Bridgewater. Then they brought in Sam Darnold, and that didn't work. They tried to bring in Baker Mayfield. Then that got him fired. So they tried all these different quarterbacks, and again, but like the thing is, they were like trying to get different quarterbacks, but because of the way the NFL is structured, they could only get basically quarterbacks no one else wanted, and that's not a sustainable strategy, right? So
Yeah.
their defense actually was pretty good, and it actually still is pretty good. They're randomly winning games now with their defense, so that's kind of cool. The Panthers. So I'll think about it more. I'm initially skeptical, but if I see some evidence that, because again, Nebraska was net like this was a school with some talent. Like there was the problem was always the coaching, and maybe if he gets some decent talent, maybe he gets a good quarterback. I'm not sure if Casey Thompson will stick around or not. But like if he has some decent talent, especially at a quarterback position, and maybe a good running back or two, maybe he could do something. I was skeptical. I'm maybe coming around to it a bit, but we'll see. I still want to see what happens with this team next year, but it could be
Yep.
exciting.
Yep. Fair. This just saddens me because this was lineups for so much fun. The Western Michigan quarterback room for next year was just set up for high comedy between Jack Salopek and Trayson Bourget. And then Western Michigan fires Tim Lester, their head coach. And I have a bad feeling that the quarterback room is going to look very different. And that just,
Sad.
it was, man, yeah, I just,
Could have been great.
the sitcom was there waiting to be written. And
Maybe
now it's
now
just,
we'll actually have clarity as to who's going to be starting week to week.
yeah. And I can't imagine an incoming coach will on either of them. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the real heartbreak is. Lastly, UNLV follows Marcus Arroyo. Guess what, UNLV? I am breaking up with you. This is a really, 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 really dumb decision. Really dumb. We are no longer a UNLV football podcast, and I'll keep it at that.
All right. So, the question for you before we move on to this segment, then, who should have been fired then? So if
Oh my!
Arroyo should not have been fired, which college football coach should have been fired?
Wow. Catching me off guard here. I gotta think about that. Let me just kind of. I can't say Gus Malzahn because they're in the championship game for their conference.
Somehow, yeah.
Um,
If
yeah, Phil Montgomery got fired. He deserved it. You know what? It's kind of too early, but I'm just getting very skeptical. Jeff Hafley at Boston College. I think it's too soon, but man, and they had some problems on the offensive line, but at this point, that's kind of his problem. And he made a horrible hire at offensive coordinator. They hired a new guy. Um, I'm going to nominate him. I don't know if you can fire a guy after year one, but I've told you, Tony Elliott, I'm out on him at Virginia. That offense is
yeah,
just hot garbage.
I think one of the Virginia ones could definitely be on the firing team.
Yeah.
Uh, I guess Sark is okay.
Yeah, it's too soon.
It's
I,
but this third year one is that's going to be the big one for him though. Like if he doesn't right the ship in this year, then like he could be a mid-season firing if they lose a couple games.
I'll say I don't know if this guy should have been fired, but Eli Drinkwitz at Missouri got an extension, which is not quite Jimbo-esque, but it's really like, what are you guys doing? Was this really necessary?
Well, they made a bowl, so
Okay. Congratulations, guys. Enjoy your bowl.
yeah,
And the other one too is they just extended him too, and this is just like very low level G5 version of Jimbo. Arkansas State stinks, and Butch Jones is a bad coach. He basically is a bad coach who just followed Brian Kelly all around and just did Jeff Collins after Matt Rule kind of things. He stunk at Tennessee. He stinks at Arkansas State. They extended him after his first crappy season, and so they should. I don't know. It's not going to work out there. I'm promising you, it's not going to work out.
hmm
And that's a good program. I don't know what they're doing. They should know better.
yeah, that's a good point.
All right, you got some audio to play me into the future bets?
Yes. Okay.
Okay. So, final resolution on the two tickets that were still outstanding. Purdue, whose song you're hearing right now, goes over the 7 wins for the season. As we said earlier, not the most straight line between 2 points, but they get it done. They win the West. They go over 7 for the year. Penn State, speaking of Purdue, I had them under 7 conference wins. Week 1, you might remember, they pulled the rabbit out of the hat, and Sean Clifford beats Purdue on the road, and they win all the rest of them except for Michigan and Ohio State, as everybody anticipated. So that was a loser for me. 2 conference championship tickets still alive from the preseason. North Carolina win the ACC at 18-1. Kansas State to win the Big 12 at 10-1. I got questions for you. I've seen a couple of futures, speaking of futures, that seemed a little weird to me. Um, Georgia to win the college football playoff, no is only plus 120. That seems to me like a kind of big reaction to like, oh, well, Ohio State's no longer a threat. Um, doesn't
Yeah.
that seem really low? The
Yeah.
yes is minus 160.
I've got. So if you look at this, I don't have to not win, but I have to win. So I have Georgia minus 170 on my book. I've got Michigan plus 290. I see plus 300 a couple places, but 290 functionally the same as
Yeah,
300. I kind of really like Michigan at that price. Like,
I grabbed some Michigan. That was the other one I wanted to ask you about.
yeah,
Yeah,
like,
I
I,
I see it this way. I think that the market, whatever the market is seeing it like, oh, Ohio State, that was the big threat, and they're no longer a threat, and so now it's a clear shot for Georgia. And we had talked about this last week when I did my deeper dive on who's the secret threat to each team in that inevitable final. And Michigan showed, hey, guess what? Yeah, we're not just a threat to you. We're actually a much larger threat to you than Ohio State, because the stuff that makes you a badass, Georgia, we're kind of just as badass, and we both have like kind of whatever quarterbacks, and they have that irrational confidence. Michigan does, and I think the market's kind of just misplaced this in terms of it's not like an obstacle got put out of the way. I think a sturdier obstacle got put in the way of Georgia.
well, this is the question, right? Is can you definitively say Georgia with Stetson Bennett or Michigan with JJ McCarthy? Could you definitively say which one is better? Additionally, by the time they'd be playing each other, obviously Michigan may or may not have Blake Corum this week, but the by assuming that the CFP they would, can you definitively say that like JJ McCarthy plus Blake Corum is worse than Stetson Bennett and like Brock Bowers?
Yeah, I just
That's
I
extremely arguable.
yeah, I have much better faith in Michigan's defense to stop Brock
Georgia,
Bowers
yeah.
than any SEC defense that they've faced. SEC was very top heavy, and middle class kind of sucked. There's not like the testy. Usually it's a legitimate test. Like, okay, there's no weeks off, and guess what? There were a lot of weeks off. Depending on whether you caught South Carolina on the wrong time, or but there were just a lot of like, okay, this defense doesn't really scare me kind of teams, or I'm not really sure about what I'm supposed to be scared of against this team or that team. There are a lot more than usual in the SEC this year of those.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, right? Georgia did avoid Bama. They played Tennessee. They didn't have the best offensive game against Tennessee. Tennessee was actually able to slow them down somewhat. Georgia barely survived Missouri. Um, Georgia had some-ish problems against Florida, covering the spread against Florida. I think that Michigan's defense is good enough. Like if they only let 23 points against Ohio State, like God, what's going to happen with Georgia? Like what can they do to Georgia's offense if they held Ohio State to only 23 points? Like watch out Georgia. Like Michigan's defense is actually good. And Ohio and Georgia's offense has been very iffy depending on the week. So I actually kind of have more confidence in Michigan's offense to move the ball, especially if they get Blake Corum back at 100%.
Yeah.
I think you then open up, you basically are able to run and pass. Now, again, Georgia's defense can stop you, but I do not have faith
if you're now suddenly going up against a competent offense that won't turn the ball over a lot, and suddenly your only way to score back points is now Stetson Bennett, that's a little concerning.
Yeah,
That is not the most like I'm not like we got this guys. It's like okay, like now suddenly you can't rely on like a pick six to get you back in a game or to get you to blow out a game, right? You can't extend that lead. So no, I don't hate Michigan at plus 300. I'm close to taking a shot at USC at 12 to 1. Um, maybe Ohio State there too. Like I kind of think Georgia might struggle a little bit with LSU, especially if Jalen Daniels is in. I don't think this is going to be like this. This spread keeps going up and up. I'm not completely sold that Georgia's just going to walk all over them. Um, but we'll have to see. I definitely think the play right now is, especially in some of these future markets, is fading Georgia. But we'll have to see.
yeah, I agree. And that's all I have for part one.
Yeah. So join us in part two, where we go on and we talk about our best bets for the week, and well, we give out our Narduzzi awards, and we give out our best. We go through every conference championship game, and we talk about what we're seeing in that. See you in part two.